Good morning, everybody. We are going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us on today's Business First event sponsored by Blue Cross Blue Shield. My name is Kelsey McKaig, and I am part of the Southwest Michigan First team. This series of small business discussions was specifically designed to strengthen and grow small businesses in our community and hopefully focus on topics that are important to you. So before we jump in, I did want to cover a few Zoom housekeeping items. If any questions do arise throughout the presentation for our speakers, please feel free to put them in the chat box. PD and I will be monitoring the chat, and we will do our best to field your questions to our speakers. And I did want to make you all aware that this Zoom call will be recorded. So we are joined this morning by Damara West of Change Agent Consulting and Be Well Beautiful Woman, and Kristin Allen of Getman, who are here to help us all get a better grip on what it means to have a balanced life, both personally and professionally. So this morning, we will start with Damara West, Principal of Change Agent Consulting and founder of Be Well Beautiful Woman. Damara, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So to get us started, could you tell us a little bit more about Change Agent Consulting and Be Well Beautiful Woman?
Yeah. So Change Agent Consulting is a consulting practice that has been around for about 13 years. It's based right here in Kalamazoo County. I work with clients all over the country on things like strategic planning and business development, executive coaching, leadership development, diversity, equity, and inclusion evaluation, and a lot of things in between. And then on the wellness side, I know you didn't ask me about Be Well Beautiful Woman yet. I figured that you might. So I don't want to take the win from you, but so were you? Let me stop.
Yeah, no, that would be great. We'd love to hear about all that you do.
Oh, okay. Great. So Be Well Beautiful Woman is really just a marriage between my background as an entrepreneur, being a licensed therapist. I don't see a lot of clinical clients these days, but I do keep my licensure current. And then just really wanting to dive deeper when it comes to wellness and what that means for me and being an entrepreneur. And so this topic that we're talking about today in terms of work-life balance is something that is definitely near and dear to my heart and a thread through all of the work. And under that body of work, we do coaching packages, both individual and group. We have a incubation program for individuals who are currently entrepreneurs who want to take their work to the next level, but also weave wellness throughout. And then we also do retreats and some other things in between related to supporting women around wellness.
That's awesome. I know we've talked before and you kind of cover everything. So I'd love to hear from you. I feel like there is this kind of utopian idea of what work-life balance is and what it should be for many people. What is your definition of work-life balance, and what do you try to teach some of your clients?
Yeah. So work-life balance is really about what we decide that it is. What is the highest use of our time right now? What kind of life are we attempting to design? In what ways are we not living the life that we want? And so when we think about work-life balance, I really invite the clients that I work with to think about their life in a holistic way. I use a model called the life wheel that looks at your life across 8 different dimensions. And I ask clients to rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 meaning that they're not doing anything and 10 meaning that they're really living out this area, so that they can get crystal clear about where the gaps are. And then from there, once we get clear about what we want, then intentionally designing space to create that in a really, really realistic way. And so a lot of times we have these dream ideas, we should our way through life often. And that's one of the things that I really work hard to eliminate from clients' thinking, because really wellness starts in the mind, right? Everything starts in the mind and it matriculates from there. And not to say that we can't start with a practice and have the opposite effect, because we can just jump right in with, and our mind can catch up to that. But the fastest way is to really start with the mind, start with intention, and to really prioritize that above everything. A lot of times we're leaving ourselves on the to-do list last, and this happens to me too. There's no arrival point. There's really just a practice around this stuff. And so That's what I would say. It's really about what is calling you. Where is your heart calling you, and what's most needed based on the roles in which you're playing? And are the roles that you're playing the most meaningful roles right now? And so one of the things that I, work with clients on is clearing space, right? Because sometimes we've said yes to way too many things, and we suffer as a result of that. There was a speaker that I had a few months back on one of our summits who said that, while we're saying yes to everyone, we are literally putting ourselves on fire. And it was a great metaphor to think about what happens when we exhaust ourselves to the point where we begin to tackle wellness in this very reactive way. And what I would love to see with the work that I do is to help women to be proactive about filling their their bucket, so that they can be more resilient on an ongoing basis.
So when you talk about filling your bucket and kind of making sure that you're prioritizing yourself and the things that you want to prioritize, boundaries are necessary, right? People have to establish boundaries between their work and their personal life. If someone is, I know this last year and a half has been kind of crazy. How do you recommend people start establishing boundaries if they've never set them before, or kind of reestablish them if it's gone to the wayside?
Yeah, I really love this question. Brene Brown said that we really can't love ourselves unless we are properly setting boundaries. And, she said that she used to be far nicer than she is now, but she's much more loving. And so the beautiful thing about boundaries is that we get to create them. A lot of times when I'm talking with clients, they feel like other people are in control, right? If only this would stop. And so the first thing is about helping people to understand that they have power to set boundaries, helping people to really understand what that looks like in their own lives, both from a professional and a personal level. And I see this theme really cut across all things related to education and socioeconomic status and race, because I do think that there's something particularly about women and the multiple roles that we play and the expectations that we tend to take on from society, to take on from our families, about what it means to be this, what it means to be a mother, what it means to be a partner, what it means to be an employee. And so really getting individuals to allow themselves to imagine what it would be like for them to be treated exactly the way they want, to get everything that they want. And and when I say that, I'm really talking about from a standpoint of, the reality is many times we're saying yes to the things that we want to say no to, and we're saying no to the things that we really want to say yes to. And we're also allowing individuals to kind of dictate what our decisions are. It's like we're waiting on people to see us and to learn for themselves how they need to treat us. And the reality is that it's really our job to help people to learn how to treat us. And it's our job to ask for it lovingly. And there is a way that we can address things in love with people based on truth. And that's why I like frameworks like Crucial Conversations, because it really does give us some crystal clear tools that we can use if we want to hold people accountable to the expectations that we've set for them. And I do think this applies not just in the workplace, but also, of course, in our personal lives. And so if we want to have richer relationships, if we want to have a richer relationship with ourselves, which is really where love begins, with loving ourselves. And so if we don't have good boundaries, there's probably a disconnect with the love that we have for ourselves. And so that requires some deep work, but it's really, really beautiful work, because a lot of times when we break through these elements, of course, what we find is more peace and more joy and more alignment in our lives, and an awakening, because, many parts of who we are just waiting to come alive. And boundary setting helps to create that.
So I know you work with a lot of different entrepreneurs and individuals. And so some of these entrepreneurs may have staff underneath them or maybe working by themselves. But what do you see the role of the organization or business playing in work-life balance? Do you think it's the responsibility of the individual to set the boundaries, the responsibility of the company, or both? How do you see those things working together or not working together at all?
Absolutely. So, when I think about leadership, we're all leaders. And so we lead from the bottom and everywhere in between, and we lead from the top. And that is connected again to this idea that, and not just an idea, but a reality that we have power. And a lot of times the people that get what they want are the people that ask for it. That's just the reality. People that get what they want are folks who ask for it, whether that be the universe or asking individuals, whatever your belief system is. And so I do believe that the workplace has a role, and I think that it's very much connected to staff engagement. It's about creating a culture that says that we see you, and part of seeing your employees is recognizing that they have um, complex lives and they have complex needs, and we don't just show up to work with a blank slate. I mean, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. Individuals' mental health has deteriorated some, and all the research has showed this, and particularly for women. And I believe that if companies want to get the most out of their staff and they want to retain their staff, I think it's one of the ways that we can support individuals and really honor where they're at. And so I appreciate having opportunities to work more and more with clients that are putting this on the forefront of their efforts. And I also think on the other side of that, individuals need to also be able to advocate for themselves within the workplace in terms of what they need. I work with clients that have taken sabbaticals, mental health sabbaticals. Maybe they were in the midst of a divorce, and that divorce, on top of some other things that have happened in their lives, had caused them to really need to step away from work for a while. Now, this is a really stellar employee, and she has a great relationship, but without the culture embedded to support this employee on her mental health, she wouldn't have had this gift to be able to disconnect so that she can reconnect, which is going to, of course, help to yield really great benefits for the company, and naturally, of course, for the individual too.
So that actually leads perfectly into my next question, which you recently posted an article or published an article about the power of pause. Can you talk a little bit more about the power of pause?
Yeah. So that is one of my favorite blog posts that I've done. And it's because, as you read, I have been working since I was 10. I started babysitting. I had my first real job at 14. I moved out at 16. And I have worked every day since. And on top of that, I've been deeply involved in community. And, I used to really pride myself when people would say things like, oh my gosh, Damar, I don't know how you do what you do. And I really felt special in some way. It was feeding my ego. And in many ways, yes, I mean, I have done a lot of things that I have set out to, and am working to birth things that are in process right now. And what I will say is that I used to believe that if I worked harder and faster, that I would get to my destination much sooner. And what I've learned through my work on manifestation is that actually we have, in all genders, have masculine and feminine energy. It's like the yin and the yang. And on the masculine side of things, which is really where society focuses heavily on, is about independence. It's about acquiring knowledge. It's about education. It's about execution. And we need all of those things in business. We need all of those things in life, depending on whatever roles in which we're playing. But what we don't focus enough on is this divine feminine energy, which is about intuition. It's about empathy. It's about compassion. It's about connection. And so what I have found, and one of the gifts that the pandemic has given to me, has been space to really think about what is of my highest good. Where do I really want to be spending my time? How do I want to live this one precious life, as Mary Oliver said? And as I thought about this, and as rich as my life has been, I've traveled the world. I've been to, 6 continents, 27 countries. I have really lived my life. I work hard and I play hard. But what I realized was that I actually didn't want to work as hard anymore. I wanted to get into this space of intuitively being so connected to myself by creating space so that I could know what is of that highest good for me. And then the practical things, and that's in the divine feminine side, and the sacred masculine is about the execution of it. And I think execution becomes that much more easy when we can get crystal clear about what we want to do with our lives, not based on what our parents says, not based on what society says, not based on what best practices say. And I'm not saying to discard those things. I'm saying that when we are guided by anything other than ourselves, we end up living fragments of other people's ideas and their lives versus creating our own lives based on our own terms. And so the space for me has been the opportunity for me to raise my level of consciousness so that I can know what is most important for my life right now. So my hope is that answered your question.
No, I think that was really good. And I think the way I'm hearing all this stuff is it feels very high level, which is good. But what are some, for the people on the call, what are some practical tips or things that they can do? Because I think all of this is really important into how you kind of craft a life that supports you as an individual. But I would assume everybody on this call, if not a large majority, works for an organization, right? So they're working inside a structure that's already in place and they have a role that they need to do every single day. Yet they have, like you said, we're all very complex beings and have a lot going on outside of work. What do you recommend as some practical things that people can do today in order to kind of set themselves up for living the life that they want to live and having balance, whatever balance looks like to them?
Oh my gosh, I have so much. My hope is we have time. So what I will say is that first and foremost, one of the easiest accessible ways is by setting an intention even before you get out of bed. And it can be something as simple as my intention is to be joyful today. My intention is to be loving today. My intention is to be in a serenity space. And you can begin just with a smile, right? There's something about starting because you're really priming yourself to be able to receive joy in this state, right? And joy is the highest vibrational emotion that we can experience. Joy, love, empowerment, peace, and which is why acquiring knowledge, particularly about self, is so important. So affirmations is really, really accessible as well. And it can be something as simple as I'm an attractor of abundance. What I am seeking is seeking me. You can do a Google search on abundance for on affirmations on anything that you're looking for. If you want to grow in your money, if you want to grow in your relationships, if you want to grow in your self-love, there are affirmations that have already been created out there. And it's just a matter of you finding ones that land with you that you're willing to practice on a regular basis. It could be a matter of you getting out your journal. And if you're into writing and free writing, and gratitude is one of the easiest ways to boost your emotion. So if you find yourself in a state of anything less than a joyful state, let's say that you're in an anxiety state, you can begin to just center yourself around authentic things that you're grateful for. And it can be anything from I'm grateful that I can hear the birds chirping outside, that it's sunny outside, that I had an opportunity to go on this 15-minute walk. It doesn't matter what it is in your life, the big things, the small things, but when we authentically connect to gratitude, it literally boosts our emotions. And when we feel better, we act from a better place. We're more creative. We're better decision makers, et cetera, et cetera. Getting outside and just stepping in the grass, spending some time in nature, grounding in the sand, because the earth, I mean, we are energetic beings, everything is an energetic force. And literally for people who do this, and research shows this, if you do that for a couple minutes, it will calm you, it will center you. getting into a few deep breaths. I mean, literally, if you do three deep breaths from your belly, not we breathe a lot of times from our chest. One of the ways that you can measure that is by putting your hands on your belly to see what the motion is like. And I really encourage people to hold their inhales and their exhales as long as they can, because stretching out that breath helps to increase the benefits from that breath. Breath is one of the most accessible ways that we can access serenity. It's amazing what breath can do. Yoga, working out, being around people that we love, savoring, right? So, one of my favorite beverages, I actually have two at Starbucks. Oh my gosh, they get so much of my money. Chai tea, and then their venti, chai tea latte, and then their venti matcha green tea latte. And so, if you're like me and you have your favorite beverage, taking the time smelling it, noticing what it feels like in your hand, noticing what it feels like when it goes down your throat, savoring the flavors, trying to think about what are all the flavors that you can taste. We can experience life in a savory way in every way possible, right? Because it brings us back into the present moment. Meditation, and a lot of times people think that meditation is not the things that we think it is, and we can literally meditate for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, and get immense benefits. Now, of course, the longer you do it, the more benefits that you're going to get. But what I really try to promote in my work is accessible ways, because the reality is that we lead really busy lives. And sometimes I have time for a lot of wellness. Sometimes I have time for a little. So if I can't be on my yoga mat for 40 minutes, I'm a certified yoga teacher. And so I have an ongoing practice, and I'm a energy work. I'm a Reiki master. And so I practice Reiki on myself, and I train people how to do that. It's a super accessible practice as well. But if I've only got time to, 10 minutes to get on my yoga practice, on my yoga mat, that 10 minutes is better than none. So I think that we also have to accept whatever time we have available to dedicate to wellness, and to fill it in a way that feels right for us. And sometimes we don't know what feels right for us until we try on a lot of these different modalities, and then from there to ascertain what sticks for us. So my hope is that's enough. There's a lot more that I can give, but I wanted to give a variety of things that people can work with that are pretty tangible.
No, those are all really great. And I think it's one of those things where I like the idea of kind of just like living in the moment and being present, because if you can be present and experience life, it's going to be more enjoyable than just trying to get through your day, right? So work will be more enjoyable, personal life will be more enjoyable because you're experiencing it, versus just saying, okay, well, tomorrow's a new day, I'll just wake up tomorrow and keep going. We did have a question in the chat box. Can
Yeah.
you speak to how setting your own work-life balance is going to impact the work-life balance of your partner? Most of us are in relationships, and our choices impact the lives of our partner. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's a really lovely question, because every decision that we make, it does impact others. And I do think that in any relationship, it's important to make sure that our needs are being met. And if one of the needs that you have is related to work-life balance, I believe that taking that to your partner, sharing where you're at and what you desire to do, and soliciting their support. And my hope is that they would be open to supporting you. And what I will say is that I think that sometimes, regardless of the support of others, we still have to sometimes do what's right for us, because sometimes what's right for us may cost the people around us some, right? Every time that I am dedicated to my wellness, that's time that I could be spending it somewhere else. But my rationale for this is that actually, by virtue of me spending this time cultivating myself, I'm actually a better mom. I'm a better business owner. I'm a better partner. And quite honestly, what I find is that I have more energy. I'm more creative. Um, and and I'm more joyful and more peaceful. And so the benefits for me far outweigh the times when people, because everyone's not going to understand our boundaries. And it's not really our job to convince people. I think that in a partner relationship, it's our job to communicate, right? And to share our intentions behind it and the context behind it. But at the end of the day, if for whatever reason they're not on board with it, then we have to decide for ourselves, do we want to honor ourselves enough? Do we want to love ourselves enough to create this space for ourselves, knowing what it's going to do for ourselves, because it does impact every area of our lives.
So we have covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time. So I have one final question for you, Damara. If people could kind of take one idea or one action item and implement it today, what do you recommend they do?
Yeah. So one thing that I didn't actually share that I would say is super easy is scheduling time in your calendar for that wellness, even if it's just one day, 1 hour. And if it's not that, right, then it's beginning your day with a smile, setting an intention, and saying a few things that you're grateful for. That will take no more than 5 minutes, literally, before you grab your phone, before you step your foot on the floor, that you are taking just a moment to start your day with this. And even though it seems like it's insignificant, that alone has immense power, because where we begin, energy gravitates to that. And we are much better positioned to bounce back if challenges arise, if we begin our day with goodness.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for joining. And in our follow-up email today, I'll be sure to send out your contact information, your website, and some of the things you talked about so people can start on that journey. So thank you, Damara, for joining us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And now we will shift things just over to Kristin Allen. She is the Director of Human Resources and IT at Getman. Kristin, thank you for joining us this morning. I think, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so great to be here. And Damara, that was just lovely. It was so nice to hear about the power of pause and intention and the reminder to breathe, because I feel myself often just breathing right here. So thank you.
So Kristin, can you tell us a little bit more about your role at Getman?
Sure. I have been with Getman a little over 8 years. It's gone by so fast. And I've had the opportunity to lead HR during that entire time. And then over the last couple of years, IT as well.
Wonderful. So as the Director of HR, I'm sure you've had to deal with a lot over the last, almost year and a half now. So I know that you've worked with a group of employees who have been able to work from home and a group of employees who are unable to do their job remotely. So two very different situations. So how have you been able to manage those situations, and how is it working out now that you're back in the office and, with all that's going on? How's life been? How's work been?
I feel like probably like everyone else, this series of transitions. Our first priority was to make sure everyone felt safe. So safe coming to work. And then I know it sounds kind of funny, but safe working at home as well. There's just so much fear out there right now. I've been surprised sometimes when I'm talking to like a high performing employee, and there's, some fear that, they could lose their job, or a remote employee who maybe feels a little bit forgotten. So, we want to make sure that people feel safe. The other thing to think about is we have this remote group of employees. For a lot of people, work is somewhat their sanctuary. Maybe their, home life is so chaotic and busy, they come to work for more fulfillment, or it's their social connectivity. And so, having teammates lose that. So it's really important now more than ever to stay connected and talk to your teammates. opportunity is found in discussion. So talking to your teammates, checking in on them. Over the last year and a half, we've really worked hard on communicating, and you feel like it's never enough. But the more you communicate and stay together or stay connected, the better. I heard a quote that has stuck with me. So, and it is, when there's a gap in communication, negativity fills it. The other thing we've done is, we have a open door, open floor policy. So we're encouraging our leaders, not to stay in their offices, but get out on the manufacturing floor and talk to teammates, see what's on their mind, and understand what their concerns are. The other thing I've found really helpful is to bring in levity and humor into my meetings. People are feeling the kind of the weight of the world on their shoulders these days. So, joking around a little bit, and also checking in. I've used an emotion wheel to really have employees check in and really listen and hear how they're doing.
That's great. I actually just had a conversation with somebody yesterday where they have been starting meetings with what's on your mind. And she had said that that's a great way to kind of get conversation rolling, because you never know what's on somebody's mind. And so just interesting to hear how there's different tactics to kind of, like you said, bring levity, but also allow people to kind of share their thoughts, use the emotion wheel, see where people are really at versus, the common response, which is, I'm fine. You know what I mean? It allows for people to have that conversation.
Yeah,
so
take that pause, like Tamara said, take that pause and how are you doing? Really, how are you doing? When someone really cares and asks that question, that's so impactful.
Right. So from kind of the management team side, or, working in HR, I asked Tamara this, but how do you see the role of the organization kind of helping employees establish that work-life balance? Do you see it kind of the onus on the company? Do you see it the onus on the individual, or how do those two work together in your mind?
I definitely think there's a shared responsibility, and for companies, that are not paying attention to it right now, we're missing the boat. So I saw a recent McKinsey study that said 1 in 4 women are considering leaving the workforce or taking a kind of a less responsible position, and 1 in 5 men. So if you think about those numbers from a talent acquisition standpoint, we cannot afford to lose all that talent, and burnout is happening, now, like we've talked about. So from a company standpoint, you really need to make sure that you're putting kind of the practices and policies in place to support work-life balance and have those conversations. And it can be anything from, flexible work arrangements, but, as something as simple as, making sure you have your standard operating procedures and, your contact address book for your part of the business, so that when you're out of the office, teammates know what to do. That's been, one thing that the company has done that's been really helpful. And then on the employee side, like Damara was saying, ask for what you want, advocate for yourself, and let the company know what you need. And then set boundaries and kind of celebrate those boundaries. Like we have a teammate, I'm going to leave every day by 4:30, no matter what, because I want to make sure I'm home and have dinner with my family. That's one of my priorities. So celebrate those priorities.
I know that Getman has a really strong culture, an employee-focused culture. Can you talk about how, some of those practices are built into the day-to-day?
Yeah, so I feel really fortunate to be at Getman. We are a family-owned company, and I feel like I kind of have the best of both worlds, like all the goodness of a family-owned company and all the kind of professionalism of a, big public company. But from a day-to-day standpoint, again, your primary relationship at work, or one of them, is who you report to. So we really talk with and encourage our people leaders to have, that relationship with their employees and be that go-to for their employees. And to also celebrate and mourn, or grieve when you need to, what is happening with that in that employee's life. So, I've never sent, so many flowers and gift baskets and that sort of thing since I have been with Gutman. Yeah. And then I think as a people leader, and it's really important to lead by example. So, in my past, I'd want to make that volleyball game or football game, I would kind of slink out. And now I, wave, and I'm heading off to the basketball game. I'm heading off to the volleyball game, and again, celebrate that and communicate that and make that known so others feel empowered to do so.
So I don't know if we've talked about this before, but with all the efforts that have been made, pre-pandemic, current situation that we're in right now with who knows what's going to happen this fall, do you ever survey your employees to see how things are working, or, as you guys have implemented new things because of the pandemic, do you kind of gauge where they're at, or how do you know if the cultural pieces you've implemented are working?
It kind of comes back to that open floor encouragement. So we have conducted surveys and focus groups and interviews, and they've all been extremely helpful. And it's really important, if you do those things, especially formal surveys and focus groups, that you listen and respond and take action and communicate back, so people know that they were heard and feel that their opinion was valued. And then I think I forgot the rest of the last part of your question, Kelsey.
No, I think that answers it, is just kind of gaining feedback, because, I think a lot of organizations have tried a lot of different things in the last year and a half, and, how do employers know if it's working, right? So to kind of pulse check, see where people are at. I know that's something that you and I have talked about before, but I think that's kind of something where hopefully people on this call can take it and run with it when they get back to their organization. So I did want to ask you about kind of this concept of fear. And so you had mentioned it earlier, but there's been a lot of fear over the last year and a half, whether it's economic uncertainty, the need for personal time if ill. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
So it's interesting, as we all kind of sit with our own fear, and when you sit with it and maybe try and push it down, it can become bigger than it is, when you try and kind of shove it out of or I'll think about that later. So I really encourage everyone to listen to that fear, because there are messages in that fear. And what I've learned over time sometimes is helpful, is to kind of really name that fear and claim it and own it and reframe it. There's a lot of opportunity there to talk with resources too in your company, whether it's your manager or a teammate or your employee assistance plan. So, make sure that, you're talking about your fears so that they don't become, bigger than perhaps that they are, and you can have resources there to support you.
So I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, as someone who's who's running HR at an organization, the topic of burnout, right? What have you been able to do, or what have you seen with your staff when it comes to burnout or helping avoid burnout? Because I think, work-life balance in theory is a wonderful concept, but I know personally it's been hard to kind of balance those things, in the last year plus. So what have you been doing at Getman, or what have you seen work in terms of kind of helping people overcome burnout or avoiding it altogether?
I think one thing we've done is acknowledge it and acknowledge where each of us are at the moment. And most of us work on a team and not independently. And so what we've experienced is that we're typically hitting those points at different times. And by talking about it, we're able to kind of buoy and cover each other. So it's really been helpful being open about how we're feeling, and asking for help. We're closer than ever before. It's so interesting with these Zoom and team meetings and everything. We're in people's houses and we get to see their kids, continue to, tap on their shoulder because they want a cheese stick or something. So it's really been, I think, healthy to just see how multifaceted all of our lives are and be able to be there for each other.
Have you had to, having a lot of employees who have kids, have you had to change any sort of policies or practices when it comes to kind of the work-life balance that is the day-to-day? I know that most schools, from my knowledge, are going back this fall, but with all the uncertainty of the Delta variant, how have you at Getman been able to kind of shift when it comes to the immediate, work-life balance of my kids are at home, right? Or have been at home and I still need to do my job every day?
Yeah, we've done a number of different things. Probably the most impactful has been our flexible work arrangements. So individuals modifying their work schedule so that they can take care of their, family needs out when it conflicts with, their normal schedule at work.
Awesome. That's great. I have one final question for you. So same as I asked tomorrow, after logging off this call, what's one thing that you suggest every participant can either take with them or immediately do to kind of help them establish a better work-life balance?
When I think about that question, a couple different things come to mind. So I may take liberty and do more than just one. And it's going to piggyback off what Damara said as well, is right now more than ever with, the stress that we have going on, it's so important to take care of yourself. So I, recognize that, often we may feel fragile and we may be kind of operating in this fragile situation. We're kind of watching that Delta variant and wondering what's going to happen in our workplace. So it's so important to take care of yourself and make sure you're, eating and sleeping and getting some exercise so that, when you do need to kick it into high gear, you're able to do so. I also listened to this news radio, and they talked about when we are remote working and on our computers, and that we can have a tendency to turn inward a bit more than we usually do when we're kind of out in the world more. And the advice there was to go outside and be in nature and be in awe. So those are the two things that I would recommend. So take care of yourself and get outside and get in nature and be in awe.
I love that. That was a perfect way to end. So thank you, Kristin, for that. And thank you everybody for joining us today. Hopefully we can do a virtual round of applause for Kristin and Damara for sharing their insights with us. And I think, we're going to wrap up a little early today, but I think that's kind of a perfect thing to do. So everyone has a moment to pause before they head into their 10 o'clock. But before we jump off and go our separate ways, I did want to share a few things with everybody. Our next Business First call will take place on September 23rd, where we're going to focus on the ins and outs of the Going Pro Talent Fund initiative. With a successful application, your company can take advantage of up to $1,500 per employee or $3,000 per registered apprentice to equip them with hands-on training. So Ashley Iovino, the business service manager at Michigan Works Southwest, will be on hand to share program details and tips so you can craft a winning grant application. PD will be posting the link for that event in the chat box, and I'll be sending out that information in the follow-up email today. And then one more final plug, we are currently recruiting for our entrepreneurial program, First Path, which we will be hosting this fall in partnership with Plywood People out of Atlanta. If you're not familiar with the program, First Path helps individuals along a self-guided discovery process to help establish the foundations of a business while honing their idea to a point at which, they're ready to take their business idea onto other community partners for technical assistance. So not only do individuals get to workshop their idea together, but they immediately become a part of an entrepreneurial network. So if you're interested in learning more or know someone who may be a good fit, that link has been posted in the chat box as well. My contact information will be shared. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. And thank you again to Blue Cross Blue Shield for sponsoring this series. And thank you all for joining us today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.